Alrighty, well, thanks for joining me today in the first of our series of AV++ webinars from MAD Systems. Today's webinar will cover our AV system QuickSilver and offer a very high-level overview. I'm Brandy Alvarado, Business Development Manager for MAD Systems, and I'll be one of your hosts today. Also joining me today from the MAD Lab is Jessica Bill, who will be providing a live demo of QuickSilver later on during the session. Just a bit of housekeeping. We welcome all your questions today, so please feel free to use the chat pane and also the Q&A panel for any questions you might have. We'll be taking the last 10 minutes of the session to address them all. For those of you unfamiliar with MAD Systems, we're an award-winning technology company specializing in AV systems integration and interactive exhibits. We use the latest technology when designing AV systems using non-proprietary equipment whenever possible, to create long-lasting and easy-to-maintain technology for museums, visitor centers, and theme parks. Our extraordinary toolkit goes well beyond the needs of basic AV, and our fully equipped mechanical workshop allows us to produce exhibits from simple support structures to complex devices such as ORIs, earthquake simulators, and moving mechanical special effects. I want to show you now a few recent case studies and show you how we used QuickSilver. This is Albert Robles Visitor Center, or ARC, Water Reclamation District in Pico Rivera. We installed our QuickSilver in this visitor center where there are no printed graphics other than the wallpaper. All graphics are projected so that the client has the ultimate flexibility when it comes to media delivery. By having projected graphic panels, the center has lots of flexibility and can update content very easily and on the fly. We'll cover this in an upcoming webinar on facial recognition, but these panels can also convey content in a different language, or languages, and also can assist with ADA compliance. Again, we'll cover this in a future webinar, so stay tuned for that. This is also from the same project, and although no QuickSilver here, this is just a beautiful art sculpture we created to become a tasting room for patrons at this visitor center. This is Jekyll Island Museum in Georgia. And in this project, we use QuickSilver sensors that triggered certain events to kick off. So for instance, in this classic car, when patrons get inside, the car's radio is kicked off. And when patrons turn the dial, it plays 50s era tunes and the dashboard lights up. Imagine other scenarios where you could use motion sensors to trigger certain events with either audio, video, or a combination of both. This project was at the Japanese American Museum in LA, and although the COVID virus took the feet out from under this exhibition called Transcendence, it was still very well received in its short showing. We used QuickSilver here coupled with facial recognition. MAD outfitted a shipping container and projected on a fog screen. QuickSilver audio components also help create and tell the story of Japanese Americans in the internment camps. At the end of the experience, via facial recognition, you end up behind the fence. It's very ethereal effect and very compelling content. Just another way we used QuickSilver. In this last case study I want to show you is the Time MLK project we did at the Disabled Museum in Chicago. Time magazine created a VR experience that literally puts you into the famous march. MAD's contribution with QuickSilver was the spatial audio portion of this experience, making various characters in the march come alive and speak from various places within the march. Patrons are getting to listen to this for the first time as it was a first-person experience. So you can see 4 very different ways we use QuickSilver: graphic panel content and media delivery at ARC, motion sensors at Jekyll, audio, video, and facial recognition at Janum, and spatial audio at the MLK experience. So what is QuickSilver and why should you consider it? Well, first and foremost, it's a complete AV system built to work as a system. I love these pictures. The one on the left is obviously what we know and use regularly today. With QuickSilver, you get back all that space. On the right, these are some of our techs at the airport walking through the door of a museum with a full AV system in the box. The parts contained within that box were 10 video servers, 4 that were synchronous, 1 rotary video viewer, 14 audio replay units randomizing, 14 audio amplifiers, 1 show system controller, 1 set of Wi-Fi equipment, the list goes on, 25 power controllers, and 4 button sets for reader rails. Just think of that for a second in terms of infrastructure and space savings. With QuickSilver, you gain back a huge part of your AV budget, and you gain back a substantial amount of real estate. So this little Hershey bar is QuickSilver. We will show you more of this during the live video demonstration. Let's move on to my second point, which is that this was built and designed as a complete system. Traditionally, we've used this little black box with that little black box and prayed that they worked together and that there were no hiccups. When QuickSilver was conceived, our engineers put together sort of a wish list of things that would give us better flexibility, more capabilities, and a much lower cost. I'll show you that wish list next. So QuickSilver offers simplified installation, very little cabling and conduit is needed, as well as a better solution for dealing with ADA requirements. It offers more flexibility in terms of graphic panels, and the cost of installation drops significantly. EC, labor, meetings, drawings, cablings, and termination costs are all vastly reduced. Our Lifesaver tool also offers a way to extend the life of your equipment and reduce your power bills. There's a very minimal amount of mounting and cooling requirements needed for the system, and the lower cost of components results in an overall lower cost of system. QuickSilver also offers an easy update media and way to control the system via T-Party. It also has an integrated power management system, as well as another useful tool called TrueCheck. It lets us know if all the equipment is online and functional within the system. With all those feature benefits in mind, let me now show you what this looks like in a diagram. So this is the way QuickSilver looks. It's comprised of media servers, audio replay units that can randomize sounds and create an audio environment for a fully immersive experience. It can also control DMX for lighting. This is especially useful because in the past we've had staff forgetting to turn off the lights or trying to turn off exhibits using the breaker switch, and that's super dangerous. We have a show control system called T-Party, as well as touch sensors with interactivity. We have a rotary or linear interactive in the system as well, and it contains a full CMS with easy to access directory for each exhibit or attraction. And lastly, it's all controlled via a user interface that could be from your iPhone, Android, tablet, or any other handheld device that you choose. Now let's review the various components of QuickSilver. We have an easy to use user interface. As I mentioned earlier, you pick the device, iPad, smartphone, tablet, what have you. Doesn't matter, you pick. So if you want a docent, for instance, to go around the museum and turn on or off exhibits on the fly, or for a special presentation, say, it's possible. QuickSilver also has video servers, either single, dual, or 4-way uncompressed video. It has interactive servers and an audio replay unit that is much easier to use than most on the market. It has a DMX controller and a Gobo framing searchlight projector function, as well as an I/O adapter or sensor button. It's bidirectional. We can take buttons in and send them out to the controller, and it has some outputs which we can drive things like mechanical devices. QuickSilver also has a CMS or central media storage with one folder set up per exhibit or attraction. Content will sync when you tell it or at the end of the night. No need for a massive amount of bandwidth here. We also have a power management tool that's fully integrated and wireless, and a show control system called T-Party that's fully stable and can control anything within the system and a whole lot more. A wireless control backbone that's stable and uses Wi-Fi, and a remote assist capability to look after our clients when we aren't around. We also have assisted self-healing for an additional peace of mind. All of this is wirelessly controlled, and all of the media is contained local to the exhibit, so there is no streaming, which is subject to disturbances. We only send control commands. And QuickSilver has loads of functionality. Here's a list of a few things that we use the QuickSilver system for. We use it for single or multiple video servers that can either be for individual or for synchronized. We'll show you that in the lab in just a bit. Outputs to create an immersive experience. It has the Gobo projector capability, as well as a fire, water projection, or other effects capability. A framing projector and projection mapping function, spotlight or donor wall function, DMX lighting, Liberty audio amplifiers, an interactive touchscreen functionality, as well as spin browsers or jog wheels, Tea Party for show control, power management, Dormouse, which is an audio video tour, excuse me, and finally Caterpillar, which is a guided system for the blind. I know it's quite a mouthful, but we have quite a lot of useful applications, and I dare say that there are many more developments on the horizon, so stay tuned. Our engineers have been hard at work. Okay, so now I'm sure you're wondering how you can get QuickSilver, and I'll say it varies. For other integration firms, we have a dedicated site called QSIC, or QuickSilver Equalizer, where you can configure your own systems. Equalizer is the tool that allows approved partners to configure QuickSilver systems for assisted installs. Just list what the system needs, and we will verify the configuration, provide a cost, pre-configure and pre-program your system, and deliver when it's ready for deployment. Once it's all live, one of our staff members will help with commissioning, final programming, handover, and training. For folks speccing us into a project, designers, consultants, architects, and our fabrication partners, we will sell the system as a whole and not individual components. Let us know what you need for your project, and we will quote the entire system using QuickSilver. We're also happy to do a comparison of traditional AV systems with racks and cablings, etc. So you can really see the difference in cost, functionality, and flexibility. I should also mention that we have an auto configuration software called DrinkMe. You'll just draw your AV components on a plan, and DrinkMe generates all the relevant files for your system, a parts list, power and heat loads, and all the individual files needed for the QuickSilver elements. It's quick and easy to use. Now I'm going to hand this presentation over to Jessica, and she is going to show you a live demo of QuickSilver. After that, I will meet you back here for Q&A. So again, please feel free to use the Q&A or the chat panel for any questions. Take it away, Miss Jessica.
Thanks, Brandy, and hello, everybody. Welcome to Mad Systems. I'm Jessica, and I'm going to be giving you a tour of our space. Here we're starting in our lobby. We have some of our older technologies that we've used on display here. And we also have some of our newer technologies which are in the works. We're currently using this 84-inch monitor over here that LG has helped us out with. And we're working on a touchless touchscreen monitor. We have several touchless technologies we're working on that we hope to be featuring in future webinars. But for now, I'm going to take you to our QuickSilver demo stations in our lab. So we're going to head right over this way. Now, as Brandy mentioned, if you guys do have any questions that come up during this demo, be sure to put those in the Q&A section below. And she's going to be answering those after this demonstration. We're going to start off right over here at our Gobo Station. The video or the still images that are projected are created by one of our micromedia servers, or a stick. And as you can see, this is very small. It can easily be located, co-located alongside any exhibit. So we have one of these sticks up behind the projector that's creating this image on the floor over here. The benefit that you get with using QuickSilver to do your Gobo is that you can interchange the content pretty easily. So say you had a fire Gobo or a water Gobo that was typically being projected, then if you had an event coming up and you wanted to project a corporate logo on the floor, you could easily substitute that media in. Not only is QuickSilver very flexible in this way, but also QuickSilver's proprietary hardware will increase the longevity and the capabilities of your system. Now I'm going to bring you guys over to this next exhibit here. We have a framing projector set up with our QuickSilver system. Again, this is going to be a very flexible alternative compared to a traditional framing projector, similar to how our Gobo projector has that kind of flexibility. So let's say we'll turn on this boot right here on our lovely doorbell up on the wall here. Now, if this were a typical framing projector, that is pretty much what you would get. You'd be stuck with one solution for this. But with QuickSilver, we could say, let's now light up the entire frame. Or maybe we even want to run a show on this. So as you can see, we have a lot of options when we use QuickSilver to implement this technology. Next over here, we have a DMX light setup. The DMX lights are again connected to one of our sticks, which has a DMX interface. The two lights that are changing right now are being controlled by our Tea Party show controller. But that's not the only way that we can use this. Any of our exhibits can also be under visitor or docent control. And for that, you could use any sort of tablet, or in this case, I have it set up on my iPhone here. So I'm going to use our docent controls to go over to the DMX, and I'm going to turn that third light up there on to red. And now let's change it. I'm going to change it now to green. And then let's change it to blue. So we've got that one under docent control. The other two are still going on the Tea Party show controller. So two different ways that we can control these DMX lights over here. And now we're just gonna pop in over here really quick to our 8K capable editing suite. We have a few different audio systems set up in here. We have a randomizing audio environment, also a 3D and spatial audio system. But I'm not going to get into demonstrating those today because, as I mentioned, we are going to be having some future webinars to show different technologies more in depth. And that's one that we are hoping to show you guys a little more at a later date. So we're gonna come back into the lab, and I'm gonna go over to our dual graphics display. Using pixels to create graphics panels is typically an issue because of equipment costs, but QuickSilver is already an incredibly affordable solution. On top of that, the media can be replaced quite easily, so you don't get stuck with fixed graphics on your wall. You can change out the media as the world changes, which we all know nowadays is happening pretty rapidly, so you don't get stuck with any outdated content. We can also run dynamic graphics on this system, which is something that we could easily create with even PowerPoint. As you can see, we have two graphics panels here, but they are both still individually controllable. And we can have up to 4 of these graphics panels running on one display. So imagine we were displaying with a projector. If we're using one projector where we would typically otherwise have to use 4 projectors, obviously that's a significant cost savings. We can also meet ADA requirements using QuickSilver's technology because interchanging the graphics allows us to keep pretty simple graphics. Modern audiences like simpler graphics, so if we aren't cluttering them up too much, trying to cram too much information in there, we can meet visitor and client needs while still making this very readable. We can even change out the language on these graphics panels, which is actually what we're set up to do on this system over here. These are both in English right now, but if we use our facial recognition trigger on the cameras, then it will change out to the corresponding languages to those people. But I'm not going to demonstrate that today because we do hope to have a more in-depth look at all of our facial recognition technology in a future webinar. So be sure to join us for that coming up. I'm going to move over here to our touchscreen interactive. So we can press any of these buttons here, and it's going to pull up the corresponding content. This again is being run by a stick on the back of the touch screen. If you take a look back there, you will actually notice there's 2 sticks on the back of the touch screen. And I'll tell you why that is. As Brandy mentioned, you don't need a separate control room for most of our QuickSilver-based systems. You can use any display in the space to program your show controller. So in our lab, we have this touch screen here that's set up to display our Tea Party show controller. Simply by changing the input from the HDMI that it's normally set to a different input. And there we have our show controller. So one of the sticks that you saw on the back of the monitor is for our show controller, while the other one is running our touchscreen interactive. And we did show you a typical touchscreen interactive here. You've got to actually make contact to get this going. But this is another area we're working on a touchless alternative for this that we hope to show you guys later. Now, if you come right over this way, this is going to be our spin wheel browser. It works like a typical jog wheel browser, but with QuickSilver, we have much more capability. So I can spin the wheel here to flip through the frames, but now say I wanted to add in a sound clip right there where he's getting knocked with the acorn. We could say once we reach a certain frame, that sound clip is triggered to play. And now this spin wheel right here, obviously I'm touching this, so it's a more traditional version of a spin wheel browser, but this is another area we're developing a touchless alternative for, so that'll be coming soon as well. We're going to move back over this way, and I'm going to finish up with our 3 video servers. And the first one I'm going to is our 4-way video server. These are all running off this same small server that's sitting there on the counter. The video and the audio on each of these videos is individually controllable. And I'm going to do that with the docent control that is set up on my iPhone here. So I'm going to turn the volume on this second monitor here. And now let's pause the first video. And now I'm going to mute the second one again, and let's turn the volume on that fourth one over there. And so on and so forth. Again, these are individually controllable, and while I do have 4 separate videos here that I'm showing you, our 4-way server is also capable of doing 4-way synchronous video, which we have implemented for some clients already. Over here is our next video server. This is going to be our 4K compressed video server. And again, this is running with a stick on the back of the projector. So for 4K compressed video, this is a very small solution. One of the things that I have not mentioned yet is a major difference between our servers and most other low-cost alternatives, and that is ours is computer output. Most of the others have video output stages, which means that their black is actually gray. And that doesn't really work in the environments that we work in. It's not the right approach. So having true black output on our QuickSilver media servers is a real advantage. Lastly, I'm going to take you guys over to our 4K uncompressed video server. Again, this is a very small server. It's the same as the one that you guys saw over at our 4-way video station. The display that we have here isn't really able to show you guys the 4K quality of the video, but I did just want to point out how compact this solution is, and that you're able to have 4K uncompressed video with QuickSilver without breaking the bank. That's pretty much going to wrap up our demonstration portion of today's webinar. I want to thank you again for joining me, and be sure to come back to the Mad Lab to see much more of the demonstrations that we have set up here. And now we're going to go back over to Brandy for our Q&A.
Thanks so much, Jessica. That was awesome. I love seeing the live demo in the lab. That's a lot of fun. And now we are going to go to the Q&A section of our demo. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A panel or the chat panel, and we'll be happy to answer those. I don't see any questions today. We have a bunch of very, very quiet people on the line, apparently. I'll give it a minute. Oh, we do have a question. Okay, Mr. David, how does it interface with speakers and microphones? I'm going to wait for Maris for just a quick second. He's getting set up in his office. So again, the question is, how does it interface with speakers and microphones? Hey, Maris.
Hey. So very much in a conventional way. So we have inputs and we have outputs. We've used a lot of local, smaller amplifiers. And for our some of our audio units have Class D 25-watt amplifiers built in. stereo amplifiers built in. For some of the other equipment, like for example, when we're running 8-channel immersive audio, it really depends on the configuration. We have situations where we're using one amplifier in each one of the corners of the room. So where we've located 4 speakers up in the corners and 4 speakers down in the corners, we're using one small stereo amplifier per corner. But if we have more room, then we've used 8-channel amplifier. And in fact, in our edit suite, we've got it set up with an 8-channel amp. So it really depends on the situation. It's pretty conventional.
Very cool. Another question was, are there any additional fees attached to our system with licensing?
None. Basically, we don't believe that that's the way to run a system. So once you paid for it, you're done. And then obviously there's the nominal 1-year warranty, which is the standard warranty that everybody else will give you. What I would say is that we're still supporting systems that we've installed 15 plus years ago. You know, people give us a call and my answer is normally pretty well that, hey, we're not lawyers. If there's a question, the clock doesn't start to run the moment we pick the phone up. So we're still helping our clients out a lot after a long time after we've installed these systems, and there's no additional fees. Obviously, if we have to replace equipment or if we have to go to site once the warranty period is over, that's a different thing. But it's pretty unusual for us to charge extra for anything.
Perfect. Another question is kind of vague, but we can answer this one. Cost ranges.
So cost ranges are kind of an interesting question. Let's put it this way. It's the components are lower cost than anything else that you'll find out there. And certainly for media servers, we're compatible or slightly better cost. We're seeing savings that vary from about 4% to about 50% on equipment, and it really depends on what equipment you're providing. And then obviously, one of the huge differences is that the infrastructure has been minimized to the point where we had one client at one point talking about having allocated best part of $300,000 for cable and conduit and electrician time and meetings and all that kind of thing. And we basically were able to suggest to them that if they left 25 grand in, we shouldn't need any more, and we'd probably be able to return some of that money to them. So the savings really is in 2 parts.
Awesome. Another question is, how are the Styx servers networked? Is it all Wi-Fi, or can they support Cat5 or Cat6 network cables?
You can do either. It doesn't matter. So if you prefer to run them wired, then we can fully wire the system. QuickSilver really doesn't matter. And in most of the installations we've done so far, we're running wireless, because we're finding that because we're in charge of our own wireless network and we very carefully manage bandwidth. There is the amount of traffic that we see on the network is relatively small, so it works really well without even worrying about it. And the other thing is that the protocols we're using are guaranteed delivery protocols, so that we know that when a message is sent, we know that it's arrived, or we get warnings if it hasn't. So there is a level of security built into the whole communication thing. There's one other thing to this actually that is relevant. Excuse my mask. What happens with QuickSilver is that when it turns itself off at night, a tea party will check to see if there's any media updates to be done. And media updates we tend to do at the end of the day after the venue is closed. So at that point, we don't care about how much bandwidth we use for other purposes. You can transfer media during the day, but obviously, you know, if you're sending an enormous amount of media through, then you're bound to see a couple of 100 millisecond delays on some of the other messages coming through. Not that people have noticed so far in all the experiments we've done. But it obviously is better to do all of your large file transfers after normal hours to keep a speed of response to absolutely perfect.
Okay, we've got another question from Ian, and he asked, it was mentioned 4K uncompressed. Can it do 4 streams at 4K compressed, or soon will it be 4 sources of 4K possible?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that, because internally this isn't really known yet. But there is an experiment being run at the moment to run 4 4K uncompressed sources from one server. Realistically, because of the cost differences, it really doesn't matter whether you use 4 sticks or whether you use one small 4-way server. The only time it really matters is when you're trying to synchronize multiple video signals together, and that is why we're running. That's why we're looking at that. The other thing that I also would say is that, and we haven't touched on this, but we are obviously in what we perceive to be a post-VR era. And we have been majoring on immersive video for a while, and we'll take that on and show you on a separate webinar. But we do have a server running at the moment that will take 8 channels of video, high def, compressed, that will be that outputs 8 channels simultaneously and synchronously. So we have other things that we are working on, and we have other things that we already have working that that would impact the way that things are moving forward.
Right. Okay, looks like we've got 2 more questions. This one from John. Does the show control function so that docents can stop a show without accidentally changing settings?
Yes, because the way that the docent interface works is that we set up effectively a web interface for each docent or for each group of people that has access. So you can set it up so that your docents only have one button on the screen, like play, and your management might have access to a completely different page, which gives them 40, 50, 100 other controls if need be. So we have an incredible level of flexibility there. And the nice thing is also that if you have docents who have Android phones or iPhones or whatever, and they just prefer to use their own equipment, you can give them permission to access that one web page so that they can actually get, they get the level of control that they should have and no more.
Wonderful. Okay, last question, unless you want to pose some more, and that's totally fine. Again, use the chat or the Q&A panel. This one's from Darren. Although I understand the media is stored locally, since these are controlled via Wi-Fi, are you able to synchronize multiple sticks across an installation, i.e. lights and media around a room? Can they start in sync at least?
So if you're running a wireless system, you always have some latitude on when commands are being issued. So the answer to that is, if they have to be in perfect sync, then you have to use a multi-channel server. We're working on synchronizing multiple sticks, but that will only happen on a wired system, not on a wireless setup. So if you've got like a whole museum that you're fitting out and you've got 8 projectors that need to be synchronous, then we are working on a software addition to the sticks that would allow us to sync multiple sticks together, frame accurately. Realistically, if you're talking about controlling other devices, so you're synchronizing lights, you're synchronizing special effects, you're synchronizing other things, then the wireless link is good enough to be able to handle that without any problems at all. The delays that we're seeing and variability that we're seeing are not anywhere near a noticeable range under normal circumstances. So the answer is no for synchronizing multiple video sources framed synchronously, but anything else, QuickSilver and T-Party are more than capable of taking on, and we're working on synchronizing multiple sticks.
Awesome. We've got 2 more questions. Ready? From Jerry. Can you recap the interface options? While you featured the mobile app, how does full screen interface differ?
Sorry, I don't understand. Could you repeat the last part of that question?
Interface options. While we featured the mobile app, how does full screen interface differ?
So full screen interface, with that you mean interactives, presumably? So
I think, yeah, the way that we control the UI.
So the interface that we're using on tablets like iPads or Androids or whatever, or iPhones, is all the same. You know, you can control it any way you like. And in fact, you can have the same running on a PC or on the control room if you have a control room, or on the control system PC if you wanted one. So there's options to do that. The full screen option, I can only imagine that you mean the interactives that we showed on the as part of the demo. And really what is happening with that is very different. This is a user interface, so we can actually build interactives that allow you to have multiple levels whereby you touch something and you get another screen up, and you touch something and you get another screen up, and you run a video, or you show some, you play some audio, or you put text up, or that kind of thing. So it's what we perceive as a relatively simple interactives. It's very different. And then we can control that, as we've seen here, using your finger like a normal touchscreen. And we have a solution up and running now where you can just look at the screen, and by looking at it and moving your eyes and your head, you'll be able to control the cursor, and then you keep looking at a point for a second or so, and it'll select that point. Does that answer the question?
I think it does, actually. Okay, I think we've got one last question here. Again, can you add a live feed or one or more of these 4 sources?
We don't have a live feed option in there at the moment. We've talked about it, but we just haven't implemented it because we haven't had anybody that that looked at the system requirement whereby we had to put that in. One of the things to realize with QuickSilver is that all of the basic equipment, and some of it wasn't shown, like we have digital inputs, we have digital outputs, we have DMX you saw, we can drive analog, we can take inputs even from capacitive switches, from ordinary buttons, even from a pH sensor if you wanted to. I mean, there's all kind of crazy things we can do with inputs and outputs, as well as what you've seen today. But the I/O is not really limited to anything that you might normally ever want to have. But when it comes to QuickSilver development, because we really have been driven for the past 2 years by initially our wish list, and later on by clients saying, oh, you know, we want to have something whereby we can run a dial and we want to go through video. So we said, okay, so we do a modification to our video server, and we do that. And some of QuickSilver's newer components are driven by just that. And you'll see that very strongly, obviously, on the non-touch variety of QuickSilver, the 7200 series, simply because it is completely driven by a situation. And we just haven't had anybody talk about live feed yet, so we haven't done it. Does it become necessary? We have ways of accommodating that if it needs to be.
Perfect. Oh, we got one more. Sorry.
That's good. Keep asking, guys. It's okay.
Right. No, we're happy to answer all your questions. This one's from Jerry. Can you talk touchless triggers? Is there a preference for camera trigger or sensor trigger with QuickSilver?
There isn't a preference. We are using all kind of different techniques at this point. We really have started. We were already looking at some of this because we have one particular client who is always asking us to do things like, I have this object, and when somebody touches it, I want it to activate. So we've looked at load cells, we've looked at capacitive, we've looked at proximity, we've looked at camera-based triggers in the past. And the only thing that has really happened is that with the current prices, we started talking, with the development team about we need to respond to this. So we started looking at different options that we might want to exploit further. And as usual, the thing got out of hand when they started looking at this stuff and throwing more and more things in the hat. And it's worked out really well. So there's all kind of different sensors that we're using for different applications. And it's kind of essential that we do, because obviously, you know, as you know, when you've implemented, sorry, I think my face was being hidden. Thank you for that. When we've implemented AV or interactive systems, you're always going to find that you have a need for different for different solutions, even though at the end of the day, all that you're trying to do is to close a switch, you know, to trigger something. And we're really trying to accommodate a whole different range so that we can offer sensible and appropriate technology, which is what this is all about. We want to make sure that the technology is appropriate for what it is that we're trying to do.
Perfect. Well, I think we finished all the questions. Those are some really good ones. And I will go ahead and wrap up here. Excuse me. So again, thanks for joining us on the webinar today for a very, very high-level overview of QuickSilver. You can find us online at madsystems.com and on our social media platforms on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. This webinar is being recorded, so feel free to share this with your colleagues. It will be up on our sites very, very soon.
Actually, there's one more thing that I'd say. We even have telephones, guys, so feel free.
Or feel free to visit us at the lab if you're ever in Southern California. We're always open to that as well. You can come see live demo, very, very much live. And as we've sort of alluded, we have a number of AV++ webinars coming up in our series soon, so stay tuned for audio ambiances and immersive environments, as well as touchless technology and facial recognition. We're going to give you a little demo of our QuickSilver Toolbox, TrueCheck, Lifesaver, DrinkMe, Dormouse, and Caterpillar. And then finally, Looking Glass Concierge and license plate recognition. Thanks again so much, and feel free to connect with me online, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or via email. I'm at brandy@madsystems.com. Take care, stay safe, and we hope to see you guys really, really soon.